Does anyone remember that time where Will Smith tried to make an MMO? Yeah, he tried to make an entire MMO that he himself marketed, and it's interesting to say the least because instead of being a traditional Western MMO that we're all used to, like WoW or Guild Wars, instead it's a mobile game developed by a Chinese studio. One that has essentially all but abandoned this title. Now it's in the perpetual cycle of maintenance mode, running the same events over and over again for all eternity. Even the devs jumped ship pretty early on in its life cycle. They've stopped posting updates on their Steam and YouTube accounts in September of 2023, just 3 months after it launched because the game wasn't received as well as what they had expected. But they do still occasionally post small little event schedules on Facebook though, so there's that I guess. Other than that though, Undawn is pretty much dead in the water, no pun intended, with most of its player base quitting not too long after the devs did. Now the game is kind of a barren wasteland. Sure, there are times where you can randomly happen to stumble upon a player out in the wild, but those instances are rare because no one is out and about exploring the world. If they are, then they're either a brand new player or a Chinese bot. The rest of the population in this game are all max level players who still hang around the main city because they've sunk an ungodly amount of time or money into it and they can't bring themselves to quit. But what's most surprising to me though is the fact that this game still has a small but loyal player base. It might show a couple hundred players on Steam, but don't be fooled, most of the players are off of Steam. This is a global game where a majority of the audience comes from outside of Western countries, mostly from China, Southern America, and Russia, where mobile game and budget gaming is much more prevalent there. But even with the language barrier, there seems to be a decent sized community here, which I'm astonished that anyone is still even playing this game to this day. But before I go deeper into that, let's rewind a bit. What is Undawn and what does Will Smith have to do with it? Well, Undawn is a multiplayer post-apocalyptic zombie survival MMO developed by Lightspeed Studios, a Chinese mobile game development team owned by Tencent that's also famously known for making PUBG Mobile. And apparently these guys make quite a bit of money because PUBG Mobile is insanely popular on the Apple and Google Play Store, accumulating over 1.3 billion downloads in 2022 alone, averaging about 146 million monthly active users. And as of 2025, they're still earning over $100 million every month. It's even won multiple awards for Best Mobile Esports Game of the Year. I didn't even know they had those. So this isn't just some random ragtag indie studio with a shoestring budget and a dream. These guys are a bit of a big deal within the mobile gaming sector overseas. So that begs the question, what does some random Chinese mobile game studio have to do with Will Smith, the famous American actor? Well, because Will Smith himself used his own name and likeness to market Undawn, they even made a whole entire trailer using him as the main actor for it. So you know the studio had a couple $1,000,000 of funding if they were able to afford Will Smith. Unfortunately though, that still wasn't enough to convince most people to play Undawn because nobody thought that it looked good, as you can see from the dislike ratio. And I mean, I could see why. The trailer didn't even show any gameplay, it was just Will Smith doing his thing, then they just put the title of the game at the end of it. Nothing about Undawn was revealed here, and people left this trailer with more questions than were answered. And that's pretty much it for Will Smith's involvement with this game. I know I kinda used his name as clickbait in the title, but really his involvement with Undawn was pretty minimal. All he did was a single collaboration with Lightspeed Studios to film one 4-minute trailer that he's probably never even looked at before. That's about the extent of his contribution to Undawn, which in all honesty probably hurt the game's chances at success more than it helped because all it did was attract more negative attention from a totally wrong audience. I mean, let's be honest, how many people within Will Smith's fanbase are really interested in playing some random mobile game from China? because I find it really hard to believe that there would be that many of them, if any at all. I don't know, it's just a hunch though. Maybe there are like a more billion amount of Chinese and Brazilian Will Smith fans who are willing to support this game in droves. But enough about Will Smith's involvement with this game. Instead, let's find out for ourselves how good Undawn actually is. Currently, the game is sitting at a 53% user rating on Steam, with an all-time peak of 8,000 players. Now, this is just on Steam, mind you. I don't know any of the stats from the Apple and Android versions of the game, and according to an article from Reuters, Undawn had flopped spectacularly, despite having a budget of about $140 million and over 300 developers on the team, which is probably why they jumped ship so early on in the game's launch cycle. But that's neither here or there. We're here to analyze for ourselves the real reason why Undawn is performing so poorly. When we open up the game, we get into the character creator right away. And surprisingly, this character creator is one of the better ones that I've seen, especially for a free-to-play mobile title. You can choose from a plethora of body types, hairstyles, face presets, and if you really want to, you can customize the fine details of your character using these sliders. This is a really in-depth character creator that had no business being this detailed because, as you'll soon see for yourself, the rest of the game is kinda low quality. So I took some time creating my own character that has to look like a K-pop male model because obviously you have to be attractive in this world. This is a Chinese game after all. Ugly people don't exist, and if they do, they're the bad guys. So I make my male model, and immediately we get into the intro cutscene that establishes the lore of Undawn. And it's pretty much your standard post-apocalyptic zombie setting that you've seen a million times already. And you'll notice that all the zombies have a glowing heart within them, and you would think that there must be some sort of lore implication for that, right? Well, no, there kinda isn't. It's never really explained what kind of zombie virus this is, or why it makes the infected have glowing hearts. We don't even know the name of the virus that destroyed civilization as we know it. It's just kinda there, and no one really knows why because the lore in this game is pretty much non-existent. Everything you see here is essentially vibe written based on whatever the devs think looks cool at the time, meaning that there isn't any narrative cohesion with the story and lore. Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that the narrative kinda doesn't matter in this game, and I don't think the player base really cares, and neither do the devs. Anyway, after our close encounter with the zombie horde, we later wash up on a random beach where we're given a tutorial of the game. Although it's kind of bare bones though, because it basically doesn't really tell you much of anything at all, and you're supposed to just figure everything else out on your own. It tells you how to move, shoot, and of course, how to access the endgame cash shop, but I'll get to that later. For now, let's just go through the first few moments of Undawn. After I get acquainted with the controls, I walk up the path over the hill, grab the first shotgun, and shoot a couple of zombies. Everything seemed fine enough so far, and the game even has English voice acting. Like, this is already surpassing my expectations.
Gunshots will look. That's a junkyard. I can't believe this. The road ahead is filled more zombies. The road ahead is slow down. I still need gas. Let's take a look around here. The repair shop is over there. I have a bad feeling about this place. I should get out of here ASAP.
Okay, never mind then. I guess it was too much to ask for the game to not be jank for just 1 second. And this is what I was talking about when I said that pretty much everything about this game screams low quality. Despite having a budget of over $140 million, Undawn still feels like it was made by an indie studio making their very first video game. This is the game that movies and TV shows use as a generic video game footage playing in the background of some high school teenager's bedroom. This is what they would play on the Game Sphere in Drake and Josh back in 2007. And as we dive deeper into this game, we'll see that the quality assurance of it is pretty much non-existent, but I'll get more into that later. For now, let's continue on. After we killed those zombies, we then take a random motorcycle and drive it to the very first settlement that the game introduces to us, the Raven Camp, which will serve as the main city of the game. We then get introduced to some of the important characters, and of course, all the female NPCs are hot because these are Chinese devs we're talking about here. Ugly women don't exist in this world. All of them need to look like supermodels, even though we're in a post-apocalyptic world and looking like a supermodel would probably be the last thing that people are thinking about here. But I like pretty girls, so I'll let this slide just this once. Anyways, we then meet Sherry, who's sort of our main companion within the story, and she'll be guiding us throughout our adventure. Now, what is the story about, you may ask? Well, I have no idea because it seems like not even the devs themselves know either. We're just kind of wandering around doing the normal things that you typically do in zombie apocalypses, and apparently there's like this whole highly technologically advanced paramilitary organization that has its own headquarters located on top of a massive flying fortress. But I never really made it that far into the story, and to be honest, I don't think any player of this game cares anyway. They just want to shoot zombies as a really hot girl with angel wings and high heels. But that's enough about that. After the NPCs give us a tour of the Raven camp, we're then introduced to the survival mechanics of the game, where you can check your body, hygiene, sanity, and metabolism. There are even a bunch of little self-care functionalities you can do, like pooping and peeing, because that's what we really needed in an MMO. This all seems well and cool for a survival game, but the thing is that I don't think that you'll ever need to manage these stats because during my few hours of playing, I've never actually had to interact with this system. For the most part, it's all pretty much cosmetic and you won't ever have to worry about any of this stuff as it's overall inconsequential to the gameplay experience. Anyway, after we get an introduction to the survival mechanics, we have to give our respects to the people who lost their lives before this. Now, I'm sure that lots of people died during the apocalypse, and it's sad and everything, but the real reason why this part is important is because we can romance Sherry. Yep, this is where the real gameplay is at. Everyone else can have their zombies and gacha mechanics, but I'm here for the dating sim inside my zombie survival MMO. Jokes aside, I don't think that there's really any substantial reward for leveling up the relationship levels. I think it's mostly just cosmetic for the people who want to date the NPCs instead of killing the zombies or something. But that's whatever. Let's get back to the real game. After we rizz up Sherry, we get a mission from the Raven Nest leader, Kane, who gives us a mission to go help another settlement that's being attacked by the zombie invasion. So we go there with Sherry and help them with their little undead problem. It wasn't too difficult and it took me around 5 minutes to clear them all out. And once we've neutralized all of them, we're then immediately teleported to our very own settlement in order to introduce us to the base building system. I'm not going to go into detail about it because I just put down some crafting benches and a couple of walls, nothing too out of the ordinary here. However, the real reward for doing all this is being able to spend the night with Sherry. Yep, we're already close like that, so I cook a nice meal for the both of us to have under the romantic starry night sky. In reality though, we're just taking turns on lookout while one of us sleeps, and while we're sleeping, we get a solo musical from Sherry herself, like it's some sort of Disney film. And this was unironically the best part about the game. This song was actually really good and I kinda hoped that there was more of it, but as far as what I've seen, there wasn't. We then get a little bit of backstory about Sherry's past and how she likes music or something. It's just another romance opportunity, no big deal. What I will say though is that I find it kind of funny how even though this game supposedly had over a $100 million budget, they still have to resort to using roleplay text to convey actions instead of, actually animating it. I guess all of the budget went to the pay-to-win gacha shop that's animated perfectly fine and well, by the way. I might even say that these animations are way better than anything else in the main game for that matter. I'll get more into the in-game cash shop later. At this point, after I've built some more stuff, I then decide to check out the other events that Undawn has going on. And as you can see, since it's around Halloween, they had some Halloween themed events currently happening. Now if I had to guess, I think that these are just recycled events from the previous years because I'm pretty sure that only a skeleton crew is working on Undawn at the moment. But that does mean that this game isn't completely abandoned and there's at least one person trying to keep it alive, and it's probably the janitor. So this game has him to thank for being the one to solely keep this game running all these years after the original devs jumped ship. Unfortunately though, try as he might, he still was left with a dumpster fire of a game that is extremely confusing to navigate because there are just so many different menus, currencies, and missions that it's all so overwhelming to learn. First of all, there are like 10 different menus in the top right corner of the screen that all give you free stuff, and then there's the menus within those menus that also have a bunch of free stuff to give you. Not only that, but there are like 10 different currencies, and many of them are just for the cash shop alone. Like at the top left, there are 3 types of virtual currency, one that you buy with real money, one that you get as rewards from quests, and one that you can use to buy high-end sports cars. And then in the middle here, there are like 4 different tickets that are all used to buy stuff in separate shops. Like, is this all necessary? Not only that, but the stuff that you can purchase from the cash shop all give you tangible stat upgrades because, to no one's surprise, Undawn is heavily pay to win. It's from an East Asian studio after all. If you spend enough money on this game, you can become much stronger than every other player on the server. Like, you can just straight up buy overpowered weapons or weapon materials to upgrade yourself to the max level. On top of that, you can purchase cosmetics like outfits and cars, which all give you a significant boost to your charisma, which I think is used for leveling up relationships? I don't know, but if you can't decide where to spend your money, you can always just roll on the gacha for your cosmetics. And what about the other 50 menus that this game throws in your face? I mean, I don't know what they expect when they throw all these different login rewards and battle passes and bonus spending rewards in your face. Then you have the new players mission challenges, and since there's a Halloween event going on, you can spend money on a lottery ticket for a special limited time costume. And then there are the level up rewards that you have to claim whenever you reach certain level milestones. And that's not even half of the crap that you can claim. There's much more, but I think you get the point. It's all just completely overwhelming to the average player, and it's extremely low quality game design. But enough about the terrible menus, let's continue playing the game like it was intended. I returned to the Redwood outpost to see that it's being overrun by zombies once again. So I clear them out, we get some more story, then they let us go on our merry way. And at this point, as I'm standing around the area, I encounter another genuinely new player that's not a bot. We hit it off for a bit, emoting each other, even getting jiggy with it, as the kids would say. Anyway, after a bit of doing our mating ritual, he beckons me to follow him and hop in the passenger seat of his vehicle. So, like a child to a white van, I hop in his vehicle without any hesitation, and then we drive off. To where? Who knows? But fortunately, this joyride was short-lived because once we crossed the zone boundaries, we both were put into completely different instances, so I was immediately booted out of the vehicle all by myself, and I never saw that guy ever again. So much for being an MMO when I can't even zone into a different area with another person. Like, come on, what's the point of having an open world if we can't even play with each other in it? I don't know how anyone socializes in this game other than the global chat, which is just a cesspool of everyone either speaking a bunch of different languages or spamming invites for their raid team. This is a horrible way to socialize and make friends on this game because no one understands each other, but alas, that's just how it is. And so I do the walk of shame back to where I came from, all alone with nothing to show for it but the embarrassment of believing I had just made a friend. But instead of going back to the Redwood outpost, I just returned back to the main town. However, I happened to return at one of the most eventful times because apparently there is some sort of Halloween themed parade going on. So naturally, I had to join in on the festivities because who doesn't like a good bit of fun once in a while? At this point, I was bored of doing the main story, so I decided to go off and do some dungeons. So I queued into one of the beginner level dungeons, which was on an oil rig. Unfortunately though, since the entire population of the game are all max level players, no one knows queuing into the low level ones like this. So I was teamed up with all bots, and let me tell you, this was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in this game so far because the bot AI is so stupid. And due to that, I essentially had to complete the entire dungeon meant for 4 players all by myself. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was fighting the final boss, which was some sort of hyper advanced jet thing that had like a bajillion health because it was balanced around 4 players shooting at it. However, since the bots on my team were completely useless, I had to essentially solo the boss with the crappy starter guns that I was given from the start. So it took me 10 whole minutes of me just pumping the boss with bullets for it to finally die. and as you can see here by the end screen stats, I literally did more than double the damage of all my teammates combined. So that was my first experience in a dungeon, and it will probably be the last time I do it with bots because they're so bad to play with that it's not even funny. And in order to wash the bad taste of that dungeon in my mouth, I look for one that's being done by actual players this time around. So I joined an LFG group through World Chat, which happens to be open for all levels, or so I thought because this was actually a max level dungeon that we were running. I don't know why it's open for all levels, but it was pretty evident that this was something not meant for brand new players. However, the party leader starts the dungeon anyway, and let's just say I was looking like the bot this time around because I was doing absolutely no damage to these enemies, and I even got downed a couple of times because I was just getting one shot. And my teammates eventually noticed that I was low level and they immediately kicked me out. Well, so much for a welcoming community, I guess. Why is the dungeon open to all levels if only high level players can complete it? That seems like a total oversight to me. I tried to join another group and once again they kicked me for being too low level, so I can't even participate in the community if I wanted to because I'm a new player. I'm just expected to level up by myself without being able to interact with others until I hit a high enough level. Why am I even playing an MMO at this point? It's basically a single player game for the first 20 or 30 hours it takes for someone to reach the point where you're allowed to play in groups. I might as well just go play Megabonk or something if I wanted a single player experience. Anyways, after being rejected by every group, I then decided to queue up for some PvP because I've only been doing PvE thus far. So I joined some 2v2 arena matches, and of course I get matched with high level players, but I try not to let that scare me and I still try my best. Except unfortunately, PvP in Undawn is some of the most unfun and unbalanced gameplay you could ever imagine. Usually in MMOs when you do PvP, every player's stats are equalized to some degree in order to make the experience fair for everybody. Except that's not how it works here. None of the stats are equalized, so naturally it just becomes a matter of who has the bigger numbers. And since this game is pay to win, that means the whales absolutely dominate everything. As you can see here from the damage I'm doing compared to the damage they're doing to me, it's not even close. I could even put a dent in their health bar. So obviously we get steamrolled because they had the bigger whale, and if we look at the end screen stats, it was pretty clear who it was. I don't know what I expected because this is a Chinese mobile game after all. It's like saying water is wet. So PvP was an awful experience, and at this point I was just getting tired, so I checked out one more hidden system that Undawn has to offer. The profession system. Sorry, that's not what it says, but I'm not going to be saying the J slur because I find it offensive, so we'll be calling it something else. Anyways, I check out the professions because it seemed interesting, and when I clicked on it, I'm immediately taken to the profession hall with all the mentors standing around advertising their school. And this is a pretty decently cool looking place, so I talked to the NPCs for a bit, and then I'm presented with 7 different choices of classes that I can choose from. They all looked pretty enticing, but I chose the sniper class because I thought it looked the most cool, and immediately afterwards, we start the training quest for it. However, there's one problem with this, it's that the game doesn't give you a sniper to use for the sniper class, so I still had to use my rinky-dink level 5 assault rifle and my own ammo that I got at the beginning of the game to do these quests meant for a sniper rifle. Why didn't they just let you borrow a sniper to complete this quest? And why the hell do I have to use my own ammo for it? And due to that, I was unable to even complete the mission because I just didn't have the damage to pass the DPS check. So I failed the mission and I left because I was obviously not ready to do this yet. And all I had to show for my effort was the massive hole in my ammo supply and the shame of failing a tutorial quest. At this point, I was just done with the game. So I'll give my thoughts on Undawn based on the few hours I had playing with it. First of all, I'm even surprised that this game is still alive to this day. I for sure thought it was totally dead, but apparently it still has a small community built from people that come from a bunch of different countries. Now, I don't know why they would gather around this game out of all the other free-to-play Chinese mobile games out there. Maybe it's due to sunk cost, maybe it's something wrong with them and they genuinely enjoy it. Who knows? But there are definitely people who are keeping Undawn alive to this very day, and to be honest, I have a hard time seeing why. Why are people still sticking around even after the majority of the devs have jumped ship? And apparently there's still going to be another expansion that's coming out later in November. I don't know what their definition of an expansion is, so that's all just completely a mystery to me. The main problem with Undawn is that it just feels like one of those bootleg dude bro video games that you would see a high schooler playing in the background of a 2000s comedy film. The textures and graphics are extremely muddy and low resolution, the gameplay is nothing really special, the story is pretty much non-existent, the new player experience is awful, and worst of all is that the game is completely pay to win. I have no idea why people are still sticking around for this game when there's literally anything else out there they could play. Even Will Smith himself could not bring in players with his weird marketing campaign. I'm sure that there are much better mobile games out there that you could play right now. So now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some undawning to do so Will Smith can undawn my dawn and I'll be able to undawn all over myself.